There are two kinds of belly fat, and most people only know about one. The kind you can pinch between your fingers, subcutaneous fat, sitting just under the skin, is visible, frustrating, and largely cosmetic. The kind that actually threatens your life is invisible. You cannot feel it, cannot see it, and cannot measure it without a scan. It sits wrapped around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines, and your heart. It behaves less like stored energy and more like a dysfunctional organ, continuously releasing inflammatory molecules that damage your blood vessels, disrupt your hormones, and drive every major metabolic disease from type 2 diabetes to cardiovascular disease. This fat is called visceral fat. And the reason it is so resistant to the usual approaches, cutting calories, walking more, avoiding sweets, is that it is not primarily driven by how much you eat. It is primarily driven by insulin. Specifically, by how many times your insulin spikes throughout the day and how high those spikes go. Today I'm going to explain that mechanism clearly, and I'm going to give you 5 morning drinks, each one chosen for a specific, evidence-based reason that directly address it. Not by burning fat magically, by changing the hormonal environment that determines whether your body stores visceral fat or releases it. Stay with me through the explanation first, because once you understand why these drinks work, you will use them consistently. And consistency is the only thing that produces results. I am Dr. Hameed Ullah Shaheen, and I want to be direct with you from the beginning about something. No drink burns belly fat. If that is the promise, close the video. What the right morning drinks do is measurable and real. They reduce the post-meal insulin spike that is the primary signal telling your body to store fat around your organs. They keep insulin lower and more stable across the morning. And when insulin stays low and stable, your body is physiologically capable of accessing and burning the visceral fat that has accumulated. That is the mechanism. Let us build on it. So every time you eat, particularly anything containing refined carbohydrates or sugar, your blood glucose rises. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, whose job is to move that glucose out of the bloodstream and into cells. Insulin is essential. Without it, glucose cannot be used for energy. But insulin has a second function that most people are never told about. It is the primary signal for fat storage. When insulin is elevated, the body is in a fat storage state. The biochemical pathways that break down stored fat and release it for energy are suppressed. The door to fat burning is physiologically closed. When blood glucose spikes sharply, from a high-sugar breakfast, from refined carbohydrates on an empty stomach, from a sweetened morning drink, insulin spikes with it. The fat storage signal is strong and prolonged. And if this pattern repeats multiple times every day, year after year, visceral fat accumulates relentlessly, regardless of total calorie intake. The morning is the most critical window. Your insulin sensitivity is at its lowest in the morning, meaning the same amount of glucose produces a larger insulin response first thing in the day than at any other time. What you consume in the first 2 hours after waking sets the insulin trajectory for the entire morning. The 5 drinks I am going to show you each address this in a specific way. Some slow glucose absorption before it enters the bloodstream. Some improve insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. Some activate the metabolic pathways that shift the body from storage toward burning. None of them work in isolation. All of them work in the context of a morning that is structured to keep insulin calm. Let us go through each one. Drink 1. Warm water with fenugreek seeds. The overnight preparation. This is the one that requires the least effort and the most advanced planning. And it is the one I recommend starting with because it works while you sleep. The night before, take 1 teaspoon of fenugreek seeds, methi, which every household in Pakistan already has, and soak them in a glass of water overnight. In the morning, strain the seeds and drink the water on an empty stomach before anything else. Why does this work? Fenugreek seeds contain a specific soluble fiber called galactomannan. When this fiber absorbs water, which it does extensively overnight, it forms a gel-like substance. When you drink the fenugreek water in the morning, that gel coats the walls of the stomach and small intestine. When breakfast follows, the gel slows the rate at which glucose from food enters the bloodstream. Instead of a sharp spike, glucose enters gradually. Insulin rises modestly instead of sharply. The fat storage signal is substantially weakened. A meta-analysis published in a peer-reviewed nutrition journal found that fenugreek supplementation significantly reduced fasting blood glucose and improved insulin sensitivity across multiple randomized controlled trials. The effect was consistent and dose-dependent. There is a second mechanism specific to visceral fat. Fenugreek contains compounds called steroidal saponins that have been shown to improve the body's sensitivity to insulin at the receptor level, meaning the same amount of insulin produces a stronger glucose-clearing effect. Better insulin sensitivity means lower insulin levels required to manage the same meal. Lower insulin means less fat storage signal. Drink the strained fenugreek water first thing. Then eat breakfast 20 to 30 minutes later while the gel is active in your stomach. The seeds themselves can be eaten if you prefer. They are bitter but nutritious. But the water alone provides the primary benefit. Green tea before the first meal. The EGCG effect. Green tea is one of the most extensively studied beverages in metabolic research, and the evidence specifically for visceral fat is more targeted than most people realize. A randomized controlled trial, one of the most rigorous study designs available, tested a catechin-rich green tea drink against a control in adults carrying significant visceral fat. After 12 weeks, the catechin group showed a measurable reduction in abdominal visceral fat as measured by CT scan. Not total body weight, not subcutaneous fat, specifically the fat around internal organs. The active compound responsible is called EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, the primary catechin in green tea. It works through two pathways relevant to visceral fat. First, EGCG activates an enzyme called AMPK, adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase. Think of AMPK as your body's metabolic fuel sensor. When AMPK is activated, it signals the body to shift from fat storage toward fat burning, specifically drawing on visceral fat stores. EGCG is one of the few dietary compounds with documented, reproducible AMPK activation in human subjects. Second, EGCG reduces post-meal glucose absorption by partially inhibiting the intestinal enzymes that break down carbohydrates, slowing the rate at which glucose enters the bloodstream and thereby blunting the insulin spike. The critical preparation detail: do not use boiling water. Boiling water degrades EGCG significantly, reducing the concentration of the active compound you actually consume. Heat water to approximately 75 to 80 degrees Celsius, off the boil for 2 to 3 minutes, and steep for 3 minutes. Do not add sugar. The sugar creates the exact insulin spike the catechins are working to prevent. Drink 1 cup 20 minutes before your first meal. Drink 3. Chia seed water, the slow-release glucose buffer. Chia seeds have become popular, but the mechanism behind why they are genuinely useful for visceral fat is rarely explained accurately. Chia seeds are approximately 40% fiber by weight, one of the highest fiber densities of any food. Crucially, a large proportion of that fiber is soluble, meaning it absorbs liquid and forms a gel. When chia seeds are mixed with water and allowed to soak, they expand dramatically and create a viscous gel that behaves similarly to the fenugreek preparation, but with important additions. When consumed before a meal, this gel slows gastric emptying, the rate at which food moves from the stomach to the small intestine. Slower gastric emptying means glucose from that meal enters the bloodstream more gradually. The glucose curve is flatter. the insulin response is proportionally reduced. A study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that consuming chia seeds before a meal reduced the 2-hour post-meal blood glucose response by approximately 22 to 30% compared to a control meal without chia. Nearly a quarter of the blood sugar spike eliminated by a single addition. But chia brings something fenugreek water and green tea cannot: complete nutrition. Chia seeds contain significant plant-based protein, omega-3 fatty acids, calcium, magnesium, and iron. The protein specifically contributes to satiety and further blunts the insulin response by slowing gastric emptying through its own mechanism. Preparation: 1 tablespoon of chia seeds in 300 milliliters of water. Stir for 30 seconds. Wait 5 minutes. Stir again. The gel will be clearly visible. Drink 10 to 15 minutes before breakfast. If you are new to fiber, start with 1 teaspoon and build gradually. Early bloating is common and temporary as the gut microbiome adjusts. Apple cider vinegar water, the acetic acid mechanism. Apple cider vinegar is one of the most misrepresented substances in health content, overclaimed by some, dismissed entirely by others. The truth sits between those extremes, and it is more interesting than either. The active compound is acetic acid, the molecule that gives vinegar its characteristic sharpness. Acetic acid works through 3 distinct mechanisms relevant to blood glucose and visceral fat. First, it slows gastric emptying, working through the same pathway as chia and fenugreek to delay glucose entry into the bloodstream after a meal. Second, it improves muscular glucose uptake. After a meal, the muscles are one of the primary sites where glucose is cleared from the bloodstream. Acetic acid improves the efficiency of this clearing process, reducing the amount of glucose that remains in circulation long enough to drive a prolonged insulin response. Third, and most relevant to visceral fat specifically, acetic acid activates the AMPK pathway, the same metabolic fuel sensor activated by EGCG in green tea. AMPK activation shifts the body's metabolic preference from fat storage toward fat oxidation, with visceral fat being preferentially mobilized. A randomized controlled trial published in Bioscience, Biotechnology, and Biochemistry followed overweight Japanese adults consuming either vinegar or a placebo daily for 12 weeks. The vinegar group showed significant reductions in body weight, BMI, waist circumference, and specifically visceral fat area as measured by CT imaging. The control group showed no significant change. Critical preparation and safety information. Never consume apple cider vinegar undiluted. 1 tablespoon in 250 to 300 milliliters of water is the correct preparation. Drink through a straw to protect tooth enamel. Do not brush your teeth immediately after. Do not take on a completely empty stomach if you have a history of acid reflux, gastritis, or peptic ulcer. Take it with or immediately before your first meal instead. Drink 5. Black coffee, the chlorogenic acid pathway. Coffee belongs on this list for a reason most people, including many health professionals, are unaware of. The popular assumption is that coffee's metabolic benefit comes from caffeine. For visceral fat specifically, caffeine is not the primary mechanism. The more important compound is chlorogenic acid, a polyphenol present in high concentrations in coffee that survives the roasting process and is absorbed in the small intestine. Chlorogenic acid works through 2 documented pathways. It inhibits glucose 6-phosphatase, an enzyme involved in hepatic glucose release. By partially suppressing this enzyme, chlorogenic acid reduces the amount of glucose the liver releases into the bloodstream between meals, reducing baseline insulin levels even in the fasted state. It also activates AMPK, making coffee the 3rd drink on this list that works through this specific fat-mobilizing pathway, which begins to explain why the research on coffee and visceral fat is as consistent as it is. A randomized controlled trial tested high chlorogenic acid coffee against low chlorogenic acid coffee in overweight adults over 12 weeks. Despite identical caffeine content, the high chlorogenic acid group showed significantly greater reductions in visceral fat, waist circumference, and BMI. The only difference between the groups was the chlorogenic acid concentration. The mechanism was the specific polyphenol, not the caffeine.
Preparation: black coffee only. Adding sugar creates the precise insulin spike you are drinking the coffee to prevent.
A small amount of milk is acceptable. No sweeteners, no flavored syrups, no packaged coffee beverages. Timing: wait 30 to 45 minutes after waking before your first coffee. Cortisol is naturally elevated immediately after waking. Stacking caffeine on top of a cortisol peak can increase anxiety and paradoxically worsen insulin sensitivity in the short term. Let cortisol begin its natural decline first. Decaffeinated coffee retains chlorogenic acid and provides the visceral fat benefit without the caffeine, making it appropriate for those who are caffeine sensitive, pregnant, or managing anxiety. Structuring your morning, the practical protocol. You are not going to drink all 5 every morning. That is not the goal, and it is not realistic. The goal is to choose 2 or 3 that fit your routine and use them consistently. Here is a practical framework. The night before, soak 1 teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in water. This requires 30 seconds and no morning effort. On waking, drink a glass of plain water first, 250 to 300 milliliters. You have been fasting for 7 to 8 hours. Rehydration before anything else supports every subsequent metabolic process. 20 to 30 minutes before breakfast, your spike flattener. Either the fenugreek water you prepared overnight, the chia seed water you stir together in 5 minutes, or the apple cider vinegar preparation. One of these 3. This is the most important intervention of the morning. The gel or acid that is waiting in your stomach when glucose from breakfast begins to arrive. With or shortly before breakfast, green tea or black coffee. This is your warm drink, the one that activates AMPK, provides chlorogenic acid or EGCG, and supports the metabolic shift toward fat oxidation throughout the morning. That is the entire protocol. Rehydration on waking, a spike flattener before eating, a warm metabolic drink with the meal. 3 actions, not 5 simultaneous drinks. A sequence that works with your morning rather than requiring it to be reorganized entirely. I want to give you realistic expectations, because unrealistic expectations lead to abandonment. In the first week, digestive changes are the most common early observation. More regular bowel movements, reduced morning bloating, a slight reduction in the post-breakfast energy dip that many people attribute to blood sugar fluctuation. These are signs the spike flattening is working. By weeks 2 to 4, fasting blood sugar, if you are monitoring it at home, typically begins to show a downward trend. Energy levels in the morning become more stable and consistent. Appetite at subsequent meals often reduces, a consequence of the slower gastric emptying these drinks produce. By weeks 6 to 12, this is the window in which the research shows measurable changes in visceral fat in consistently adherent participants. Not dramatic transformation, measurable reduction. Waist circumference decreasing by a centimeter or 2. Clothes fitting differently across the abdomen. The change is gradual and steady rather than sudden. Visceral fat is responsive to insulin management because it accumulated in response to insulin. Remove the stimulus, flatten the spikes, and the body, given adequate time, begins to release it. These drinks are the tool for maintaining flat spikes every morning. The cumulative effect over months is what produces the visible result. What these drinks cannot do. One final honesty. If the rest of the day involves repeated high-sugar, high-refined carbohydrate meals, these drinks are working against a current flowing strongly in the opposite direction. They will produce some benefit. They cannot completely overcome an insulin environment dominated by multiple daily spikes. They work most powerfully in the context of a diet based on whole foods, eggs, meat, fish, vegetables, legumes, healthy fats, whole grains, where the morning protocol is reinforcing a generally lower insulin food environment rather than compensating for one that remains high spike throughout the day. Think of these drinks as the foundation of the morning, the part of the day where you have the most control and where insulin sensitivity is lowest and therefore most worth protecting. Build from that foundation. Visceral fat is not simply a cosmetic problem. It is a metabolic condition with a specific driver, insulin, and a specific window of maximum opportunity, the morning. 5 drinks, each with a distinct and documented mechanism. Fenugreek water for gel-based glucose slowing and insulin sensitivity improvement. Green tea for EGCG and AMPK activation, targeted specifically at visceral fat. Chia seed water for soluble fiber buffering and nutritional density. Apple cider vinegar water for acetic acid, gastric slowing, and AMPK activation. Black coffee for chlorogenic acid, hepatic glucose regulation, and AMPK activation. Choose 2 or 3. Structure your morning around the sequence: rehydration, spike flattener, warm metabolic drink. Do it consistently for 12 weeks. Your body will respond. Not because any of these drinks is magic, but because you have removed the primary signal that was telling your body to store fat and created the conditions under which it can finally release it. Leave a comment below and tell me which of these 5 you are going to start with tomorrow morning. I read every comment. Share this video with someone in your family who has been frustrated by belly fat that does not respond to the usual approaches. The mechanism they have been missing may be in this video. I am Dr. Hameed Ullah Shaheen. Start your morning right. Everything else follows from it.